I gave a homeless boy $10, and in return he handed me a note. "Your daughter-in-law put something in your coffee. Don't drink it." I was shocked, but decided to trust him. When I asked her what she put in my coffee, she did something unbelievable. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. If I failed today, I'd lose my mind, and with it, the last scraps of respect my son still had for me. The steam curled up from the blue mug with the tiny flowers I hadn't picked and never would have bought. It sat warm against the sore pads of my fingers while the kitchen ticked and settled around me. The soft knock of the fridge motor, the whisper of the vent, the faint scrape as Lena moved a spoon she'd already washed just to make noise. "Fresh pot for you, Joan," she said, voice smiling, eyes not. She used my first name the way some people use a wet rag. Light, casual, a wipe that smears more than it cleans. 20 minutes later, I zipped my sweater, tucked the newspaper money into my pocket, and stepped into crisp Colorado air that smelled like dry leaves and a neighbor's bacon. The corner store bell gave its tired ring, and for a blessed stretch of seconds, I remembered mornings with Paul. 2 mugs, 2 chairs, a shared crossword at our little oak table. Grief is a tide I learned to breathe under, but that day it sloshed low enough that I could walk steady. I had my paper under my arm when the boy rose from the steps of the empty brick building next door. He couldn't have been more than 11, clothes sharp with dirt, hair matted into hard little waves. He clutched a torn backpack like it was the only part of him that wouldn't blow away. "Ma'am," he called, small but sure, "please wait." I paused because something in his voice snapped me to attention the way a dropped dish does. No thinking, just turning. He came careful, like I might spook, and pressed a crumpled piece of paper into my hand. His fingers were cold, bones like pencils. "Don't drink the coffee," he whispered. "The lady with the yellow hair, she put something in it. I seen her." Before I could ask who, when, how, before I could pull even one thread, he'd bolted. A streak of backpack and sneakers, vanishing down the block like a bad dream when you reach for it. I stood there with the note and the paper and the distance between what I wanted to believe and what I knew in my bones. The handwriting shook but was clear. "Don't drink the coffee. She don't know." I watch. The world went a shade quieter. The traffic hum receded behind my pulse. I ran a thumb over the soft pulp of the paper and thought about the blue mug, about the way Lena always handed me that one and kept the white ones for herself and Evan. I thought about how I'd been sleeping. God, the sleeping. Heavy, strange sleep that swallowed mornings whole. I had never been a napper. Lately I'd been a ghost until noon. I walked home with my newspaper tucked tight under my arm like a shield. That house had good bones and bad air, and the door knew my hand, not the other way around. The blue mug sat exactly where I'd left it, half full, innocent as daisies. It smelled like coffee. It looked like coffee. The boy's words tasted like metal. I poured the mug into the sink. The dark stream ran glossy over the strainer and disappeared into the throat of the house. When the last brown ribbon was gone, I ran water until it came up pale and clean, and I told myself I'd just washed away gullibility instead of proof. An hour later, Lena breezed in from grocery shopping with a bag of greens and 6 items that cost more than my monthly phone bill. "How was your walk?" she asked, dropping her keys into the ceramic dish I'd given them last Christmas. My dish living in their house like I did. Tolerated, useful, not quite at home. "Refreshing," I said, folding my newspaper. I lifted the blue mug so she could see the wet ring where the coffee had been. "You didn't finish your coffee." Her voice was sugared concern. Underneath it, I heard a tap-tap calculation, like a pencil against a ledger. "You feeling all right today?" Maybe I'm finally breaking my caffeine habit. I smiled like a woman who'd read a magazine article and changed a tiny habit for health. Something flickered across her face, there and gone as if a cloud had crossed a car window. "That's probably for the best at your age." At your age. In my head, I marked it down next to the blue mug and the heavy sleep and the way she had begun to narrate me to my son. Forgetful, fragile, confused. A story works best when it's repeated by people who love you. That night, the house quieted into its usual sounds. The television upstairs, water moving through pipes, the soft complaint of wood settling. On other nights, the fog would rise early, syrupy and thick, and I'd be hauled under. Not tonight. I laid flat and listened to the silence until the silence answered. Without the coffee, my mind felt like it had been wiped with vinegar and a clean cloth, sharp, streak-free. Into that brightness came the awareness of how precarious my place had become. I remembered the whispers that stopped when I walked into rooms. I remembered Lena's phone voice slipping out when she thought I slept. She can't stay here forever, Ev. There are facilities. Nice ones. Always nice. As if a cage lined with velvet would make you forget the lock. I slept like I used to. Light, alert to the wind, up before dawn because that was who I had been before grief and chemicals rewrote me. The coffee smell met me in the hallway. Lena stood at the counter in her robe, hair like straw spun smooth. She looked at me in my clothes, not my robe, and the flash of disappointment in her face came quick enough to betray her heart. "You're up early," she said, reaching for the blue mug. "Must be feeling better." "Much," I said, and took the mug she offered. I lifted it, let the heat kiss my lip, and pretended. My hand was steady. It would need to be. "That's wonderful." She turned to pour her own cup, and I watched the muscles in her jaw loosen. She had a plan. People with plans relax when each piece falls into place. She forgot I'd once run a home on a budget that didn't bend. You learn to read relief the way you learn to read sales. I excused myself, dumped the mug in the sink, ran water until the smell faded, and returned. She'd gone upstairs. I heard the murmur of her voice and the lower rumble of my son's. "She seems more alert today," she said. "Maybe we should increase the dosage." Kinetic beat, right there. The words didn't just land, they detonated. Not information, not gossip, but a decision. Increase the dosage. I sat at the kitchen table and put my palms flat on the wood I'd scrubbed 1,000 times in my other house. The plan I had been nursing: observe, confirm, play along until I understood the shape of the thing, was suddenly too thin. A new move was required. When someone announces escalation, you either brace or you fall. I went small. Small is stealthy. I became the woman Lena had already written into her story. Mild, grateful, obedient to morning routines. I drank coffee every day while she watched and poured it into the sink when she didn't. I praised her muffins. I admired the herbs she killed on the windowsill. I made a great study of not being seen. Each day without the brew cleared another room in my head. I started to see the house as a living map, where she kept the specialty spices she loved to display, which drawer she nudged with her hip, what cupboard she checked twice to confirm what I had consumed. I learned the sound of her steps. I relearned the sound of mine. By midweek, my body had adjusted to mornings again. The sun through the east window landed on my wrist and warmed the veins so that my pulse felt like it had color. I found my handwriting in a notebook on the nightstand and recognized it. The mirror showed a face that looked like mine. Older, yes, grief bruised, yes, but my eyes were mine and not some dull glass. Kinetic beat. Test day. Lena handed me the blue mug, and as she turned, the handle slipped from my fingers. The mug dropped the way life does, slow then sudden. It hit the rug and rolled. The coffee sloshed high but didn't spill. My heart knocked. Lena spun back, then past me, sweet as rain and just as fast, and snatched it up before I could. "Careful," she said, laughing. "You scared me." "Clumsy old hands," I said, and let the shame land where she wanted it to. Shame is a smoke cloud. If you blow it back at the person who lit it, they cough. When she left the room, I took the mug to the sink, folded a dish towel under it to mute the sound, and poured. The dark ribbon slid away. I rinsed, refilled with hot water, and brought it back to my place at the island, where I sipped and praised the brew that was now just water with a scent memory. That night, I listened again. The house has lungs. It inhales lies, exhales truth. Upstairs, Lena's stage whisper, "It's getting worse. She naps all afternoon." She liked to build a file, and files need anecdotes. Evan murmured agreement, a sound that made the teenager in him visible to me, the boy who said okay to avoid the fight. "He works too hard and too long, my son." He believes people who sound like experts even when they've only read a few articles and learned a few phrases. I didn't sleep much, not because I couldn't, but because I had something better, a plan that wasn't just the absence of coffee. In the morning, I moved 2 houseplants, swapped 2 mugs, and borrowed a cardigan from the laundry basket. Small acts, but enough to know if she noticed. People reveal themselves when routines break. Lena didn't comment on plants or laundry. She did, however, stand half a second longer than usual as she reached for the blue mug at the back, as if counting the inches. Her fingers paused on the rim. Then she smiled without any teeth and handed it to me. Kinetic beat, the phone. While I ran water in the sink to hide the pour, her phone rang on the counter. Caller ID flashed a sister's name. Lena picked up, voice sliding into that private, sincere tone meant for kin. "It's worse," she said, turning her head away as if the sink had ears. "He's finally coming around to the idea. Assisted living, maybe Stone Ridge. We have to move on this while she's still, Stone Ridge." I filed the name next to increase the dosage. A place, a plan with rooms. That was the mid-arc reversal I hadn't wanted but needed. This wasn't a drift toward something vague. It was a march toward a chosen destination. Their map had lines on it. That forced one on mine. I adjusted again. Instead of just disposing, I started to stage. A ring of coffee on a coaster I could wipe away. A ½ inch in the bottom of the mug that I forgot in the den, so she'd find it and mark me down as sloppy, sleepy. Then I made small improvements they wouldn't attribute to me. Laundry folded, a button sewn, a bill paid online. I tracked their whispers against the evidence of my competence and watched which story Evan believed. By Friday, the fog had been gone long enough that memories returned with edges. The day Paul taught me to keep desk keys, not in the drawer, but in a cup in the laundry room. The day we'd labeled files for insurance and wills. I felt the contour of my old life like the grain under varnish. I went for my paper early, and the same building sat with its blank windows, lucky and unlucky both for being empty in a town with rising prices. The boy wasn't there. I wished I knew his name. Gratitude without a recipient sits uneasily in the chest. Back home, Lena's robe sash trailed like a ribbon as she moved through the kitchen, and she hummed. Humming is for people who think they've already won. When she set the mug in front of me, I held it long enough to warm my hands. She watched. I tasted, which is different from drinking. She relaxed. "Big day?" I asked. "Just errands," she chirped. "Maybe I'll stop by Stone Ridge to see a friend." There it was. She had said the name to me now. Names are a test. Do you repeat the syllables? Do your hands tighten on the mug? Do you ask where, how far, how much? I only nodded and admired the little rosemary plant that was turning gray under her care. "I should water that," I said. "I already did," she said, though the soil was as dry as cocoa powder. She didn't notice plants dying. She noticed whether I drank. When she swept upstairs, I held the blue mug over the sink and waited. I waited to see if a part of me would hesitate, if some old fear of causing trouble, of being ungrateful, of ruining my welcome would stop my hand. It didn't. Trouble was already here. Gratitude had been weaponized against me. Welcome had a deadline. I poured. The drain swallowed, faithful as ever. By afternoon, I'd added a new piece to the plan, a cheap spiral notebook that slid neatly under the cushion of my chair. In it, the spine-scratching paper, I wrote what I could verify. Times. Who handed me what I heard, and from where. The names of places said and the sequence in which they were spoken. I left out the parts that felt like curses, even if they were true. A record is for the future. Venting is for the moment. Kinetic beat. Almost caught. I was at the sink when the back door clicked and a breeze moved the curtain. Lena's footsteps quickened when she saw the mug in my hand under running water. "Oh," she said brightly. "More?" "Just rinsing," I said. "It went cold while I wandered off." I held the mug up to show its clean coffee brown sides. My face made a shape it had not made in years. The careless smile of a woman who doesn't fear being questioned in her own kitchen. Her eyes narrowed a hair. There are looks you learn in your 20s and think you'll never use again. I've always hated the one that says, "I know what you're doing and I can't prove it yet." She made another pot. I left the mug on the counter and said I'd be right back. In the bathroom, I ran hot water, poured, watched, rinsed, wiped the rim dry with toilet paper so no towel would tell on me. A silly old trick. Not silly at all when you needed it. By the time the sun went down, I had my notebook tucked, my head clear, and my hands steady enough to thread a needle and sew a loose button on Evan's coat. He came in late, hair damp from a shower he took at the office, the way men do when they've run out of hours. He sat beside me, quiet, and together we watched a game we didn't care about. That's the kind of silence I used to wish for when life was full and noisy. Now it felt like a safe house. "Mom," he said, "You doing okay?" He wanted me to say yes so he could put the worry down. I wanted to say yes so I could ease his shoulders. "I miss your dad," I said instead, "but I'm managing." He studied my face. "You look better." I almost told him everything right then, rocks tumbling out of a torn bag, but the plan in my notebook would have turned to dust. Instead, I asked him about the client in Mesa he'd flown to see last quarter. He talked, his voice smoothed out. He smiled once. Real. It made him look like the boy who tracked mud into my kitchen and lied about it poorly. Later, in bed, I named my truths in the dark. A boy I didn't know had risked himself to warn me. A woman I lived with was altering me to write me out of my own life. A man I loved was drowning between marriage and motherhood and wanted to be good at both. And me? I was done being a cup someone else could fill. In the morning, I got up before the coffee. I put on the navy dress Paul had called your church backbone dress, though I wore it to the grocery once just to see if I could stand tall in produce. Clothes are a kind of sentence you can speak without a voice. I chose shoes that didn't whisper. The blue mug waited on the counter. I didn't touch it. Instead, I pulled a kettle from the back of a cabinet, the one I'd brought with my boxes and grief, and filled it. The hiss of flame met water's small thunder, and the sound moved through me like relief. When Lena appeared, she blinked at the kettle like it had sprouted overnight. "I'm trying tea," I said. "Doctor's orders." "Dr. Baker?" she asked too quickly. I smiled. My own. She watched me pour, measured the angle of the cup to my mouth, looked for the stagger in my step that would tell her the day's project was underway. I sipped, calm, present, unaltered. It was a small end to a small war, but I had learned long ago that you win a campaign an inch at a time. You take back the morning. Then you take back the afternoon. Then you take back your name. By noon, I'd watered the rosemary properly, moved the plants where they'd actually get sun, and made a list for tomorrow that I slid into the notebook. Check high shelf and kitchen, sort bathroom cabinet, laundry room key cup. That last line made me laugh out loud. Sometimes your past leaves you gifts in places you don't expect. Sometimes a boy you've never met hands you back your life on a crumpled scrap of paper. That night, I wrote one sentence at the top of the next page. Tomorrow I stop pretending and start proving. I underlined it twice. Then I slept like a woman with work in the morning. I waited for the house to empty itself like a lung. Evan left first. Kiss on the top of my head, keys, a soft slam that meant he'd be back late because he always is when a client just needs one more document. Lena lingered in her robe, then changed, then redid her hair, then watered the rosemary plant that only I watered, then took the blue mug to the sink and made a little ceremony of rinsing it. She liked props. Finally, the back door clicked, and the morning took her with it. The quiet wasn't silence. It was possibility. I set the kettle on, not for tea this time, but for cover, and pulled the spiral notebook from the chair cushion. On the first page, I wrote the date and the hour because a future judge, real or just the one that lives in a son's heart, likes numbers. Then I wrote, house empty. Begin search. The laundry room first. The light in there is honest. Fluorescent, unflattering, the kind that shows everything. I moved the lint trap, the basket of unmatched socks, and reached for the cup on the shelf above the dryer. Paul used to say keys left where you use them get used. He was right about that, and most things. Inside, a sprig of screws, a church key someone had kept for sentiment, and 2 labeled rings. One said garage in Evan's blocky hand from high school. One said desk in a neat small print I recognized from lists on the counter. Lena's. I slid the desk ring into my pocket and put the cup back exactly where it had made a dustless circle on the shelf. I paused, looked, breathed. When you've lived long enough, you learn the difference between tidying and tampering. The office smelled like printer heat and the faint sweet of the candle Lena favored. I stood in the doorway and let my eyes map it. The laptop docked, a stack of mail sorted into to pay and to file, a framed photo of Evan and Lena in front of a canyon, tanned and temporary. The desk drawer had a lock that wasn't serious. The desk key turned with a friendly click. Inside, receipts in a letter tray, a checkbook, envelopes pre-stamped with our address, a slim leather folio, and there, an amber bottle the size of my thumb with a white pharmacy sticker. I didn't touch it, not yet. I wrote the placement down, right drawer, back corner, next to folio. Kettle hissed from the kitchen. Good. Sound cover is a woman's best friend after comfortable shoes. I placed a dish towel over my fingers, reached in and slid the vial out. My glasses did that useful old lady thing and made the world larger. Patient name: Lena Mercer. Mercer was still new enough in my mouth that seeing it on a sticker made something twist. Instructions: take 1 dropperful by mouth at bedtime as needed. Generic: doxylamine succinate. 2 refills remaining. Dispensed. 6 weeks ago, sleep aid. Legal. Harmless, in the right hands. A whisper in coffee in the wrong ones. I took 3 pictures with my phone, one of the bottle, one of the label, one of the bottle exactly where it had been in the drawer, angle and shadows matching. Then, without thinking, I read the leaflet folded under it. Common side effects: drowsiness, impaired coordination, confusion, dry mouth. I folded it back along the same crease, the way you return a borrowed letter. The folio held a trifold brochure: Stone Ridge Senior Living, all sunlit courtyards and white-haired people laughing over cards they probably didn't want to play. A post-it stuck to the front in that same neat hand. Call admissions, evaluation window. I photographed and slid everything back into place, aligning edges until the drawer read as untouched, even to the woman who checked twice. Kinetic beat, the slap of a delivery truck's back door out on the street. My heart sprinted and then remembered itself. The house didn't shift. No footsteps, no keys. Bathroom next. The cabinet over the sink wore all the right faces: floss, pain reliever, multivitamins, a jar of ointment that had outlived 3 moves. Behind the vitamins, a second bottle, no label this time, alcohol smell sharp enough to sting. I unscrewed the cap and held it away from my face. Bitter. A drop on the tip of my tongue tasted like metal and compromise. I spat into the sink and ran water hard. I wrote, Unlabeled dropper bottle behind vitamins. Smell. Alcohol. Bitter. Photos. In the kitchen, the coffee maker sat like a well-used altar. The basket still wore a ring of damp grounds. I lifted the glass carafe and poured the remaining coffee, an inch and a whisper, into a clean canning jar. I had a dozen because in another life I put up peaches and pickles and summer itself. I twisted the lid, wrote coffee, 9:42 a.m., kitchen on a strip of masking tape, and stuck it on the side. I tucked the jar into the freezer behind a bag of peas and a brick of something labeled chili in my husband's old block letters. The sight of his handwriting steadied me. Dead men keep you alive in the funniest ways. Drawer by drawer, cupboard by cupboard, I became the person I had been in the first house, the woman who can tell if a teaspoon is missing by the space it leaves. In the junk drawer, I found a small pill crusher I didn't own last year. In the pantry, a box of maximum strength sleep aid tucked behind rice. In the recycling, 2 pharmacy bags with perforated tear tops. Photo again, photo, a pause, a breath. I took notes on a page I would later copy in my slow, careful script. What, where, when, with what. I didn't trust the cloud. I've never liked furnaces you can't see. Kinetic beat. The garage door rattled like a man waking. I froze, then realized the neighbor across the alley must be coming in. I put my hand flat on the counter and felt the tremor in the laminate fade. 1 inch at a time, I moved again. The last place I checked before noon was the tote Lena called her go bag. It lived under the sideboard with the reusable grocery sacks we never remember to reuse. The tote was open at the top, striped, cheerful the way something can be right before it hurts you. Inside, a lip balm, a wallet, a notebook, big as my palm, her neat lists, 2 pens and a folded sheet with corporate branding. I unfolded it with the towel and read, Durable Power of Attorney, Healthcare. The top portion was blank. The bottom was a checklist of signing requirements and witness options, highlighted in yellow. Highlighted. Not a someday. A plan mid-stride. I took a picture. My hand shook in the frame. I set the page back, made the corners meet, and slid the tote into its hollow. It was almost noon. The kettle had cooled. I made tea I didn't need and carried it with me, a prop of my own. Then I did something small and mean and necessary. I laid a single gray hair of mine across the seam of the desk drawer and another across the edge of the bathroom cabinet. Not for drama, for information. If they moved, I would know by the break and the curl. I ate lunch, cheese, an apple, crackers. Because you forget to eat when you're fighting, and I've learned that an empty stomach makes you think everything is a bigger emergency than it is. Then I did one more pass of the kitchen, this time the underside. I ran my fingers along the lip of the counter in case someone had taped something there, checked the outlet where the coffee maker plugged in for residue, the small place on the backsplash where a stain that wasn't coffee had bloomed and been wiped. The blue mug sat smug and pretty in the rack. I turned it in my hands and found nothing but glaze. Afternoon drifted in with its old light. I used to like this hour best. The hour when work was behind me, dinner was a promise, and the house smelled like onion and garlic and something baking. Now it smelled like lemon cleaner and fear. I turned on the oven fan to move air and went to the bedroom I used at the back of the house. Paul and I had bought that bed before Evan was born. The headboard held a loose slat that had been a hidey hole for mad money and then for tiny plastic rocks with glitter in them when Evan went through a geology phase. I slid the slat, put the spiral notebook inside, and slid it back until the old varnish line matched the stain on the wood. I put a paperback, mystery, dollar store, on the nightstand and bent the corner so it looked like I'd been reading instead of rebuilding my life. Kinetic beat, car in the driveway, door. Voices, one high with cheer that wasn't real, one low with fatigue that was. I walked slow to the kitchen with my tea, so my steps would carry the sound of harmlessness. "Joan," Lena sang, "there you are. How was your morning?" I watered the plants, I said, and looked at the rosemary with dirt that finally looked like dirt and not cocoa powder. So thoughtful. She moved to the sink, checked the dish drainer with a glance, and reached for the blue mug. The drawer hair would hold. The cabinet hair would hold. Her eyes skated off surfaces like a stone, skipped by someone who's practiced. She poured coffee that wasn't there anymore because I had left the carafe clean and empty. She frowned for a fraction. "Did you want coffee?" "No, thank you. Tea for me today." I lifted the cup like a shield. She gave me the smile I've seen women give when they realize the person in front of them isn't as easy as advertised. "Evan's running late," she said. "I'll start dinner in a bit." I took my tea to the den and sat where I could see the kitchen reflected in the glass of a framed print. Lena moved with efficient care, the way she did when there was a script. She touched the mug, checked the coffee maker, took her phone from the counter, and made a call in that soft, not-for-me voice. "She's up and down," she said. "Still having episodes." I know. I'm keeping notes. Yes, I'll bring her." She listened. "Tomorrow works." "Bring her where?" "Stone Ridge, Dr. Baker, admissions." The print's reflection kept bouncing light so I couldn't see lips. It didn't matter. Tomorrow had just become a hornet in the room. That night, after dinner and dishes and performative yawns, after the television pretended to be our friend, I waited until the house made its sleep noises. I slipped from bed, felt for the floorboards that creaked and the ones that didn't, and went to the office. The hair on the desk drawer had moved, split and stuck to one side. The cabinet hair in the bathroom had fallen. Good. Some people would read those as losses. I read them as confirmation. They had checked. They now, not just she. Evan would always be where love and tension met. I hated it. But naming things correctly is how you build anything that doesn't fall down. I took the amber bottle again, this time with a plastic sandwich bag over my hand, and held it to the light. The liquid inside sloshed thick as syrup. A dropper bulb stained faintly brown. I unscrewed the top and squeezed, then held the air-filled dropper over the kitchen sink and let one drop fall. It hit the steel with a tiny dark star. I rinsed, I dried, I returned, I aligned, I breathed. Back in my room, I wrote a note without flourishes and put it in an envelope with no stamp. "Evan, I need you to read this when you can, alone. I am keeping a record of things I can prove. If I am not allowed to talk to you privately, assume my fear is justified. I love you. Mom." I addressed it to his office, where a receptionist would put it on his chair with the morning's mail. Not dramatic, just a wedge driven where truth could fit. Morning came early because worry is a rooster. I made tea. I put the blue mug out myself, centered it on the island, and waited for the sound of Lena's sandals. She came in bright, hair-pinned, blouse too cheerful for any building with admissions. "We have an appointment," she said. "Just a little check-in. Dr. Baker likes to see his seniors twice a year, and we've been remiss." My eyebrows did their best impression of surprise. Today, I would have dressed. "You look nice," she said, approving the navy dress she'd once called a bit formal for breakfast. She reached for the mug, then hesitated in the smallest way human eyes can register. "How about a little pick-me-up first?" "I'm fine," I said. "Tea suits me." She recovered quickly, smiled hard enough to show a hint of gum, and made herself a cup. White mug, the one she always used. She took a sip, looked at me over the rim. "You know, sometimes being open to help is the bravest thing." "Is that what you tell yourself?" I asked, a little too sharp, then softened it with a laugh. "When you take my car keys at night so I don't drive to Vegas in my sleep." She laughed on time, the way chorus girls do when they know the song. Exactly. At 10 we left. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and people who didn't want to be there. Dr. Baker's nurse weighed me, measured my blood pressure, made kind noises that didn't reach her eyes. When the doctor came in, he did his doctorly thing. Stethoscope, light in eyes, warm hands, practice concern. How are we doing, Joan? Sleeping better, I said. Thanks to the house's care, Lena added quickly, we've been monitoring her routines. Dr. Baker looked at me, not her. It was small, but it mattered. Any changes in mood, confusion, falls? Some odd fatigue in the mornings, I said, calibrating for truth and strategy. Better lately. Could be normal grief rhythms, he said, and I loved him for naming my husband's absence like it still had weight. Could be something else. He made a note. Any new medications? Lena's head tipped a fraction. Just the usual vitamins and her... My tea, I said, and whatever ends up in the blue mug. His pen stopped. He looked at me again. What do you mean? I mean, I don't drink coffee anymore. Since when? Since last week. He waited. He's good at waiting. Good doctors are just clergy with prescription pads. I didn't say everything. Not there. Not yet. But I pressed his card into my palm like a prayer and said, I'd like a copy of my chart, please. He nodded and handed a form to the nurse without looking at Lena. I signed. The paper felt heavier than its ink. Back home, Lena's day turned. Bright became brittle. She moved things without moving them, opening and closing cabinets, shifting the blue mug half an inch so the island looked different. I watered the rosemary again. Plants tell the truth with their leaves. By late afternoon, I had done what I could, gathered, photographed, labeled, preserved. I had the jar in the freezer, the notes in the bed, the letter en route to an office chair that held my son's shape, the hairs that told me someone was watching the drawer that watched me. I had a doctor who had looked at my face instead of the person speaking near it. It wasn't everything. It was enough for today. After dinner, Evan stood at the sink with his sleeves pushed up, the way he did when he was 16 and thought rolled cuffs made him a man. Water ran. Dishes clinked. Lena dried with furious tenderness. You know, he said, voice casual, maybe we could all go for a drive Saturday. Take Mom out by Stone Ridge. There's a trail with good sun. Lovely, Lena said. Her eyes flicked to me, and I saw the tiniest spark of triumph, the way a match head glints before it flares. Maybe, I said. If my mornings are good. He looked at me, really looked. They seem better. T agrees with me, I said, and dried my hands on a towel that I folded exact. That night, I wrote one more line at the top of a fresh page. Tomorrow, make copies, not of papers, of me. The part of me that knows where truth lives. Then I underlined it once. Then I slept with the weight of the spiral under the bed like a second spine. In the morning, I would move from gathering to forcing the story into daylight. There's a moment in every hunt when you stop tracking and turn the animal toward the clearing. I had found the tracks. I knew the path. All that remained was to make sure the daylight fell where it needed to. I set the blue mug on the counter like a decoy, put my kettle on like a promise, and waited for footsteps I could count without fear. If I let her keep the script, I would lose my name and my say, and they'd call it care. Saturday rose cool and blue. The forecast promised 70 T-Tower and sun on the West Trail by Stone Ridge, the kind of benign day that makes people do terrible things because the sky looks like permission. Evan slept late for the first time all week. Lena woke early like women do when they have plans. I dressed in quiet clothes and put the kettle on. I set the blue mug on the island the way she liked to see it, front and center, ready. Beside it, I put a white mug. I turned both handles to the right. I placed a small plate between them with 2 cookies I didn't intend to eat. Cookies are peace flags. Sometimes they work. Lena came in with crisp hair and sandals that clicked like punctuation. Morning, she sang. Big day, you're going to love the light out by Stone Ridge. I love light, I said, and slid my phone onto the counter, screen down, the way grandchildren do. No drama, just a rectangle near my hand. She reached for the coffee and built her little altar. Filter, scoop, water. The small pause that meant she was checking the measure. She glanced at the kettle but didn't comment. When the machine began its heavy breathing, she turned to me with a smile I'd watched her practice in photographs. "How are we feeling?" she asked. "Clear," I said. "Good," she said. "We want you at your best." There it was, the word that pretends to be a gift and arrives with an invoice. She poured from the carafe, and the kitchen filled with the smell of Sunday mornings, cinnamon and heat, and the part of life that is easier when there is a second cup across the table. She set the blue mug in front of me, the white one at her place. The cookies sat between us like witnesses. Kinetic beat. I rotated the mugs a half-inch so the handles pointed left instead of right. "Let's trade," I said. Her eyes did something small. The lids stuttered. The mouth smiled harder to cover. "Oh, Joan," she laughed, almost fond. "Don't be silly." "I'm not silly today," I said, and slid my mug toward her. The porcelain made a soft ceramic hush against the island. "It's just a mug," she said. "Then it won't matter which one you drink." She stood a hair taller, a subtle lift of ribs and chin, the way a dancer finds balance before a turn. "You're making me feel like a criminal." "I'm giving you a chance to be a wife." I kept my voice calm and small as if I were asking about coupons. "A wife who doesn't mind switching cups with her husband's mother." "Evan's mother," she said, and her smile forgot to be warm. "Your son. And I am trying to keep this family stable." Stable isn't the same as quiet. I turned the blue mug back to me, the white to her, then rotated them again, slow enough that she could have stopped me but didn't. "Trade with me." She didn't move her hands, she moved her story. "This is the paranoia Dr. Baker warned us about." "Dr. Baker warned me about grief," I said. "He warned me about loneliness and dry mouth and blood pressure. He did not warn me about my coffee." She laughed, bright and empty. "You're not being rational, Joan." "I'm being rational enough to preserve a jar of the last pot you made," I said, and watched the sentence land. "It's marked with the time and date. It's in the freezer. If I'm wrong, it will bore the lab man out of his mind." "You took my coffee." She blinked hard, and I saw the flash of hurt a child shows when someone spoils a trick before they can pull the scarf away. "You're sneaking." "I'm documenting," I said, "and I'm asking you to switch mugs." She touched the blue handle with her fingertip as if testing temperature. "Joan," she murmured, softer now, "I know you've been scared. I know you miss Paul. I know mornings are hard. But you can't do this. You can't turn our home into a courtroom." "Home is the first place that becomes a courtroom," I said. "Ask any woman with a locked drawer." "You're tired." "I'm rested." "You're confused." "I'm not." "You're making me feel unwelcome in my own kitchen." "You're welcome here as long as you don't try to erase me." "Erase you?" She laughed again, higher, and put her palm flat on the island as if for balance. "You live here. You eat here. We take you to the doctor. You plan evaluations without me," I said. "You highlight power of attorney handouts and tuck them in your bag. You tell your sister she's getting worse. And you talk about moving on this and you say nice when you mean far away." Her face drained, then flooded. "You went through my things." "I went through a desk with my name on the bill," I said, and reached for the phone. "We can catalog violations if we need to." "You're recording this," she hissed it. Low and dangerous, the sound a mother makes when a toddler reaches for a stove. "I am," I said. "And if there's nothing to hide, you'll be glad I did." "You can't." "I can. In this state, I can. And I am." I put my palm over the rectangle. "This is the deal, Lena. This is me fair." She stilled, no breath, no blink, for a count of 2. "Okay," she said at last, stepping back into a shape that fit her voice again. "If it would help you feel safe, I'll drink from the blue one." She reached. Kinetic beat. I slid the blue mug away and handed her the white. "No," I said gently. "What would make me feel safe is you choosing to switch without the performance. Take mine, I'll take yours. Clean. Her hand hovered, then retreated. The space between us filled with coffee steam and something sharp enough to be tasted. Her smile fell off like a sticker peel. "You are sick," she said, quiet and even. "You are sick, and I have tried so hard." "You've tried," I agreed. "So have I. Today we both get to stop pretending." From the hall, a yawn, a man's weight on stairs. Evan came in with hair going in 3 directions and his father's old University of Mesa t-shirt. He kissed Lena's cheek, then mine, and reached for a banana. "What are we doing?" he asked, not looking up yet. "We're switching cups," I said. He laughed, mouth full. "Weird game, Mom." "It's not a game," Lena said quickly. "She's accusing me of poisoning her." The word hit the air like a pan dropped too hard. Evan's chewing stopped. He looked at me, then at the 2 mugs, then at the phone under my hand. He swallowed wrong and coughed. "What?" "I'm not accusing," I said. "I'm offering a test you can pass easily." "Joan," he said, hurt breaking through the sleep in his voice. That's a really serious thing to say." "It is," I said. "It's also a serious thing to refuse a simple switch when there's nothing in the blue mug." "Because it's ridiculous," Lena said, slipping a hand into his elbow, a braid of comfort and possession. "Because this is the paranoia we've all been worried about." I looked at my son and saw the boy who flinched when his best friend's mother yelled, the boy who held up a finger in church as if quiet could stop a thing already in motion. I spoke to him as if he were the man he had become. "Ev," I said, "I have a jar in the freezer. I have photos. I have a brochure with her notes. I have a record of times and places. I am not crazy. I am not cruel. I am tired of drinking what someone else decides I need." He looked at the freezer as if he could see through metal and frost. He looked at Lena. He looked at me. "Guys," he said, hands up, peacemaker, "let's not do this before coffee." "After coffee is exactly when we've been doing it," I said, gentler than I felt. Lena's laugh had sand in it. "You see, this is what I've been dealing with." "She won't switch cups," I said. Evan scrubbed his face with his hand. "Okay," he said. "We're not. No one's drinking anything right now." He reached for the carafe, as if moving it would put the moment someplace else. "We can talk about this like adults." "We are adults," I said. "Adults who can say yes or no to a simple test." "Joan," he said, and his use of my name like a colleague and not Mom did a small violence neither of us intended. Come on." "I'll make tea," I said, "for me." I poured hot water over a bag and let the steam wash my face. I picked up the white mug, offered it to Lena. "Trade? Stop it," she whispered low and hard. "Stop this. You're making a scene." "We don't have a crowd," I said. "We have a son." "And this is how you want him to see you?" "I want him to see me," I said, not a sedated suggestion of me. "Enough," Evan said, palms out, voice going flat in that office tone he uses when clients want a discount and a miracle. We'll table this." "I won't table a drug," I said. "I will put down a line." I set the white mug in the sink. I took the blue mug, carried it to the freezer, opened the door, and placed it beside the jar, labeled with time and date. "There," I said. "If you want to test today's, you can. If you don't, it waits with the rest of the chili." "That's not—" Lena stopped, recalibrated. "We're going to be late. If we still want to walk the trail." "I'm not going on a field trip to preview facilities," I said. "Not today." "We said we were," she said, "as a family. As a family, we will have a meeting here tonight," I said, and the words surprised me with their steadiness. "At 7, I'll ask the neighbor to sit with us for the first 10 minutes so no one says later that someone else said something they didn't. Then the 3 of us will talk. I will show what I have. You will say what you have. Evan will decide what he thinks." But this, I tapped the blue mug in the freezer with one knuckle 3 times, as if on a door. "This stops now." "You can't dictate terms," she said, and her mouth went flat the way it does when the bread dough sticks. "I can dictate terms for my body," I said. "And in this house, I won't drink what I don't watch poured. If that's intolerable, we can rearrange the kitchen or the schedule or our living arrangements. I already asked Dr. Baker for copies of my chart. I'll take those with me wherever I go." Evan's face had gone a color I remembered from Little League, the color he got just before a fly ball landed in the web of his glove. "Mom," he said, softer now, "what are you asking?" "3 things," I said, and held up fingers to keep my voice from shaking. 1. Nobody puts anything in my food or drink, ever, unless I watch and agree. 2. We all stop discussing me with third parties without me present. Sisters, admissions offices, anyone. If there's a plan with my name, my ears hear it. 3. We delay any evaluation or facility tours until I've had a second appointment with Dr. Baker alone and an unbiased assessment of my mornings, without coffee. I paused, then let the last one come. 4. We all drink from any cup in this house without flinching. Lena's mouth twitched. "So now you make rules. So now I make requests that protect me from harm." I looked at her hands, the way the fingers tightened and released as if trying to remember a piano piece. "You can consent to that, or you can refuse and make me ask the Riverton City PD to weigh in on whether someone in this house is tampering with my food." Her face changed color. "Police," she said, as if the word were vulgar. "It's a crime to alter someone's intake without consent," I said. "It's also a sin. I prefer to use the word that matters to you more." Evan blinked. "Mom, please." "I'm not calling anyone," I said. "Yet. I am setting the table for the conversation we already have to have." I turned, opened the freezer again, and moved the jar a 1/4 inch, making room as if for something else we'd soon need to chill. 7. Lena folded her arms, unfolded them, found her voice. "I won't be ambushed in my own home." "This isn't an ambush," I said. "An ambush is when a woman thinks she's drinking coffee and wakes up in the afternoon convinced she can't trust herself." "God," she said, and the word came out like a curse pronounced with Sunday school lips. "You are impossible." "I used to be," I said. "Then someone made me meek with a dropper." She picked up her purse, dropped it, picked it up again. "I need air." "Take some," I said. "Bring back honesty." She left by the back door, sandals angry. The screen door snapped twice, a sound like a verdict and a warning reread. Evan and I stood with the kind of space between us that belongs to men and their mothers when both are trying not to cry. "Ev," I said. He put his hand on the island, the same place Lena had steadied herself earlier, and pressed until his knuckles paled. "I don't know what's happening," he said. "I don't know what to... There's a lot, Mom." "There is," I said. "But some things are simple. If it's coffee, she can drink mine." He stared at the 2 cups. He nodded once, as if alone in a room with a chalkboard. 7, he said. 7, I said, and felt the line I'd drawn take weight like a beam set on a foundation. He went to shower. I carried my tea to the window and watched our little patch of world do its unremarkable Saturday. A man hosed a driveway that didn't need hosing. A girl wheeled a scooter. A dog sniffed the same bush he'd sniffed yesterday as if it were new. I thought about vows I had made and kept, and vows other people had made and broken. I thought about Paul's note handwriting on frozen chili, and the boy's note handwriting on a crumpled scrap that had put me back in my own life. Kinetic beat. A text buzzed. "Evan, from upstairs. Can we actually do the neighbor thing? For the first 10? I think it's a good idea. I'll ask Mrs. Patel." I typed with the careful thumbs of a woman who still double spaces after periods because she likes room to breathe. "Thank you." "And Evan, check your office chair Monday. There's an envelope. If you don't need it, throw it away." "Okay," he wrote. And then, "I love you. I'm trying." I put my hand over my phone, a habit from another life. Me too, I told an empty kitchen where steam still hung, then spelled it with my fingers on the island wood, as if the grain could carry it where it needed to go. The day stretched. I watered the rosemary. I made soup because soup gives an hour something to do, and the house needed the smell of garlic to remind it of its vows. I took the jar out of the freezer long enough to confirm the label still read what I had lived. I placed the blue mug behind it like a soldier behind a shield. At 6:30, I put 3 glasses of water on the table. I set a pad of paper and a pen in the center. No one writes minutes of a family meeting, but the tools say this isn't a fight, it's a record. 7 came like a tide. The doorbell rang. A neighbor in her soft sandals, eyes kind, hands empty, ready to be the little bit of daylight we had asked into the room. "Thank you," I said, and meant it for more than one person. Lena arrived last, face scrubbed of expression and heat. She looked at the table, the glasses, the pad. She looked at the freezer with its faint line of frost where I'd opened it twice. She looked at me. "This is not how families do things," she said. "It's how this family is going to do this," I said. "We'll be done with your help in 10 minutes or less." She sat. She folded her hands. She became again the version of herself who wins raffles and makes fundraisers run like trains. "Fine," she said. "Let's be adults." That's when the fear I'd been carrying set itself down in the chair beside me and let me breathe without it on my lap. "Okay," I said. "Here's the order of operations." I pointed to the pad, the water, the faces. "I'll speak. You'll speak. Evan will ask questions. If we lie, we'll feel it tonight. If we tell the truth, we'll feel it every morning." The kettle clicked as if in agreement. Outside, the last light of a decent day slid off the fence and into the grass. Inside, we began. At 7 sharp, the doorbell sounded like a line being drawn. Mrs. Patel came in with her cardigan hugged close, the way neighbors hold their kindness when they don't know if it'll be needed, like a blanket or a bandage. She sat at the end of the table, palms flat, eyes steady. She'd agreed to stay 10 minutes. Witness only. No commentary. Light in the room that wasn't kin. Evan took the chair to my right. He had shaved the afternoon stubble and changed into a clean shirt, the small courtesies men bring to rooms where they feel outmatched. Lena arrived last, punctual to the second, face composed the way people's faces are right before a school picture. Practiced, pale, not quite the person you know. On the table. 3 glasses of water, a pad of paper, a pen. I set the blue mug on the counter with its open mouth toward us, a reminder without being a threat. From the freezer, I took the jar labeled in my handwriting and placed it beside the pad like a paperweight with a history. The room smelled of the soup I'd made because garlic is a kind of courage. "Thank you for being here," I said to the table, to the air, to the part of me that had wanted to run today and hadn't. "I'm going to start. I'll be clear and brief." Lena folded her hands. Evan tapped his knee twice, then stopped, catching himself. "This is what I can prove," I said, sliding the phone from my pocket and setting its screen up, recording red and visible. Over the last week, when I did not drink the morning coffee prepared for me, my mornings were clear. When I did before that, they were not. "That's subjective," Lena said, quick, a bird snatching a crumb. "It is," I said, and tapped the jar. "This is not. Coffee from Wednesday, 9:42 a.m. Saved. I have others. And photos." I opened my camera roll and swiped, laying image after image like cards. Amber bottle with pharmacy label bearing her name, the leaflet with side effects, the unlabeled dropper behind the vitamins, the pill crusher from the drawer we didn't used to own, the Stone Ridge brochure with the highlighted checklists and her post-it note, "Call admissions, Rihi, evaluation window." Mrs. Patel's eyes lowered and lifted, careful not to linger, careful to take it in. Lena laughed softly, the sound women use to absorb impact. "You went through our private things." I went through what I needed to stay safe in the home where I live, I said. I have dates and times written down. You have paranoia, she said, gentler now, a balm for a burn she preferred to pretend I'd inflicted on myself. You have grief and insomnia and fear and a story you've told yourself. Doxylamine is an over-the-counter sleep aid. It's legal. I keep it for myself. The unlabeled bottle is a tincture, lemon balm, herbal. If there was any in your coffee, it would only be to take the edge off. If, I repeated. She chose her next words like stones across water. On one morning. Maybe two. You were so agitated. I was afraid you'd fall. Evan's head turned to her so fast I heard a tendon complain. Lena. What? She said. I'm saying the quiet out loud because she's recording, and our neighbor is here, and apparently the truth is a performance now. I put a drop in one cup one time to help. It was harmless. I should have asked. I'm sorry for that. Harmless? The word sat between us and sucked oxygen. Doxylamine plus grief plus the body I live in isn't harmless, I said. And you do not put anything in any cup I drink without my consent. That's not a debate, it's anatomy. Color rose on her throat, a tide that didn't know whether it wanted to be fury or shame. You make me into a monster in your head, she said. It's easier than admitting you're not the woman you were. You nap all afternoon. You moved the houseplants to spite me and then lied about it. You staged hairs on drawers like a detective in a TV show. She gestured at the jar. This isn't evidence, it's theater. Then drink mine tomorrow, I said. She stared at me as if I had offered her a handful of bees. Mrs. Patel cleared her throat softly and checked the clock. 8 minutes had passed. She caught my eye with a look that said, I'm here until 10, then I am not. Use me wisely. I nodded, gratitude like a pin pricking a balloon of panic that didn't get to inflate tonight. Lena, Evan said, and the one word seemed to cost him 10 more. Did you ever add anything to Mom's coffee? I told you, she said too fast. Once, maybe twice, a drop of something gentle. I was worried and she wouldn't listen, and She reached for my jar with 2 fingers and then thought better. I didn't tell you because I knew how she'd spin it. Evan looked at me. I held his gaze as if it were a plank between rafts. I do not spin, I said. I knit facts together. I knit, saved coffee, photos, your wife's name on a sedative, a plan for Stone Ridge, written without me in the room, calls to a sister about moving me while I'm still. A word that does not belong in a sentence unless you're talking about photographs or pawns. Stone Ridge is not a prison, Lena said, voice tightening. It's a community. We toured it for my aunt. It's lovely. And we discussed taking a drive out there as a family. Evan suggested it. Your mornings have been rough, Joan. You've gotten lost walking to the corner. You filled the sink and walked away once. You told me the rosemary smelled like your wedding dress. It smells like my wedding day, I said. A corsage, as in a memory. I remember that because I'm remembering again. Mrs. Patel shifted in her chair. Time, she said softly. 10 minutes. Thank you, I said to her, and meant the 2 words more than most vows I've ever spoken. Would you stay just 2 more? I think we need a few more. She took a small breath, then nodded, a gift bought with her evening. Evan rubbed the bridge of his nose. Okay, he said, placing both palms on the table as if to ground himself. Okay, here's what I'm hearing. Mom feels she has evidence of non-consensual alteration of her food. That's a bright line. And I hear, he looked at Lena, I hear you saying you added something mild once or twice out of worry and didn't tell anyone. Both things can be true, and both are not okay. Thank you, I said, relief shaped like a chair I could sit in for one breath. Lena's jaw worked. So I'm the villain and she's the saint? After everything I've done for this house? I make dinner, I manage the schedule, You don't manage me, I said, quiet because the truth didn't need my volume. That's the hinge we're on. You don't see how much work you are, she snapped, then swallowed the words like a pill without water. Evan flinched. Lena. What? She said. She is. She's work. So am I. So are you. Life is work. I am trying to keep us all afloat, and if I put a drop of lemon balm somewhere because I can't take one more morning of her wandering the house like a ghost, then you ask, I said. And if I say no, you respect it, and you don't slip it anyway and tell yourself a story where help equals control. Control? She laughed once, brittle. I can't even pick the mug I like without drama. Because the mug became a message, I said. You wrote in the coffee what you wanted me to be. Mrs. Patel stood, gentle but firm. I'm going to step out, she said. I think you have what you need from me. She looked at Evan. I heard what I needed to hear. Keep the pen, she added to the table. A small blessing. She squeezed my shoulder as she passed, a pressure like a door closed gently for privacy. The front door clicked and quiet returned, not empty but available. None of us moved for 5 seconds that visited like a storm cloud and passed like one too. Evan broke first. Okay, he said again, his voice lower, rasped by something like grief's cousin. No more additives of any kind, ever. That's not negotiable. Lena stared at him. Do you hear yourself? She asked, incredulity opening like a fan. You're letting this narrative make me into some kind of... I'm listening to my mother, he said, and even he seemed surprised at the clean edge on the sentence. I'm also listening to you. You admitted you added something. You did that without telling me. You planned... He winced, corrected himself. You explored facilities without Mom in the room. You asked your sister about moving on it while she was still. I'm not punishing you, I'm drawing lines. You are choosing her, she said, flat like a doctor saying a test result none of us wanted, a truth and not the whole truth. I'm choosing safety, he said, and transparency, and delay. We're not touring Stone Ridge. We're not talking admissions windows. We are throwing away anything in this house that alters food or drink without labeling. We are inventorying every bottle. And he turned to me. You will have an appointment with Dr. Baker alone. If he thinks we need a cognitive assessment, we'll do one. With you in the room, with a neutral evaluator. My throat tightened. Not because I feared an evaluation. Today, I didn't. But because the simple fairness of his terms felt like a porch light in a storm you've been walking in for too long. Lena's hands went to the edges of the table and gripped. So now I am unsafe, she said. Now I'm the danger in the house. You are not a danger, Evan said. And the word he didn't say but I heard anyway was, yet. But you did a thing that crossed a boundary. We're going to make sure we don't put you in a position to cross it again. She laughed without a smile. What does that even mean? Do you lock the coffee maker? Do I need a hall pass to boil water? It means, he said, and his eyes shone in that sharp way they did when he was 8 and lying on principle about whether he'd taken the last cookie. For the next week, you don't prepare Mom's food or drinks. I will, or she will. You can cook for us, please do, but she serves herself. We'll use the white cups, or all of them. We'll rotate until no cup means anything. My house, she said, barely louder than breath. Our house, he corrected, soft and unyielding at once, and my mother's home. She let go of the table and smoothed her blouse with both hands, a movement that tried to iron her back into the woman she wanted to be. And your wife? Where does she fit in your brave new order? In it, he said, with rules we agree on. Which brings me to one more thing. He swallowed. We're pressing pause on any power of attorney paperwork. Nothing gets signed without counsel, and not because I don't trust you, because that's what adults do when money and care mix. There it was, the financial stake catching light, signatures, authority, the quiet paperwork that shifts a person from subject to object. Her mouth opened, then closed, then found a new shape. "Counsel?" she said. "Lawyers now?" "Advice," he said. "Not a fight." "You're bringing strangers in," she said. "You're bringing police, lawyers, neighbors." "I'm bringing fresh air," he said, and the simple phrase landed like a clean sheet on a bed that had needed changing. I placed my palm on the jar. "Ev," I said, "we should also ask Dr. Baker to order a talk screen on this. If it's nothing, it's nothing. If it's something, it's not." Lena shot to her feet. "This is insane," she said, and her voice cracked on the second syllable, the way a board breaks where you didn't expect it to. "I won't live in a house where I'm accused and watched and—" "Then don't," Evan said, too fast for either of us to catch the words before they hit the table. Silence held the sentence and turned it around so we could all see it. He inhaled hard. "I don't want that," he added quickly, softer, truer. "I want you here, but I need to know you're not going to help like that again. If you need a few nights at Maya's to breathe and reset, do that." His voice broke on the sister's name the way names do when they have history baked into them. Lena blinked. The tide on her throat went out. "So I go," she said flat. "I'm asking you to choose," he said. "Stay and agree to the lines right now, or take 2 nights and decide if you can." She exhaled a sound that wasn't a word. "I am being punished for care," she said, and the sentence held all the martyrdom and none of the math. "You are being asked to stop hurting someone while you say you're helping them," I said. "I know the difference. I lived married. I raised a teenager. I have poured love like concrete where it belonged and like water where it didn't, and learned the hard way which one held." Her eyes met mine, and for one clean beat, all the costumes fell. I saw the woman who had wanted to be good at this and wasn't sure where the line between good and control lived and had stepped over it, telling herself she could step back any time. Then the costumes came rushing back and she was herself again, or the version she wore when she needed armor. "I'll go," she said. 2 nights to think." She leveled a finger at the jar. "You won't take that to anyone until I'm back." Evan shook his head. "I'll take it to Dr. Baker in the morning," he said. "Not police, doctor. First step." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were bright and unreadable. "Fine," she said. "Enjoy your victory." "Enjoy your air," I said, and didn't mean it to cut, but maybe it did. She left without slamming anything, which in our house is louder than a slam. The car engine caught. Tires whispered down the street. The house adjusted its weight on its foundation the way old houses do when the wind changes. Evan leaned back and let his head tip until he was looking at the ceiling he'd painted last summer. "Okay," he said, and I heard the boy who used to say that before cleaning his room as if the syllables made order out of chaos. "Okay." "I'm sorry," I said. He looked at me, startled. "For what?" "For making you carry both ends of the rope," I said. "It's heavy and it burns." He smiled without his mouth moving, a father's smile that arrived too early because the world had asked it to. "We'll figure it out," he said. "Tomorrow I'll drive the jar to Dr. Baker. We'll get rid of the dropper, the pills, He waved a hand, a benediction over junk. "I'll bring home takeout tonight so your soup stretches." "We'll eat the soup," I said. "And bread. Bread stretches better." He nodded, grateful for a tiny task that had nothing to do with law or medicine. He took the jar to the fridge and put it at eye level, in front of the milk, where no one could miss it. He closed the door and stood there with his palm flat on the stainless steel like a man praying at a modern altar. After dinner dishes, we didn't watch anything. We didn't need noise. We sat with the windows open to the last of the warm air because tomorrow would cool 10 degrees, and we had earned this particular softness. Crickets stitched the yard. Somewhere down the block, a boy laughed. The sound snagged on a memory I couldn't quite pull free, then slid off into the dark. Before bed, I wrote in the spiral, 7 p.m., meeting with witness. Lena admitted adding something gentle once or twice to help. Refused to switch cups. Evan set clear rules. Stone Ridge paused. POA paused. Jar to Dr. B tomorrow. Kitchen transparency for 1 week. Lena to Maya's for 2 nights. I added, I did not call the Riverton City PD. Not yet. The writing steadied me the way a banister steadies stairs. I tucked the notebook back behind the headboard slat and pressed until the wood clicked home. Old house whispering secrets back into place. Sleep did not come sweet. It arrived like a guard who had finally found the right cell. I woke once to the click of the thermostat and the idea, sharp as a pin, control survives absence by leaving tools behind. In the morning, I would check what had been left, not just bottles, numbers, access, narratives. I would replace what could be replaced, lock what could be locked, and invite in light where it hadn't yet reached. When dawn tipped into the room, I went to the kitchen and put the white mugs in a line, like soldiers at ease. The blue one I turned on its side on the counter, a little body resting. I filled the kettle, set it to sing, and watched steam unwind like a ribbon from a child's wrist. The house inhaled. The house exhaled. We had not won. We had not lost. We had taken a room and held it. Evan came in with hair in surrender. He set his hand on the jar in the fridge, then on my shoulder, letting both cool under his palm. I'll be back by 9, he said. Dr. Baker's office opens at 8. I'll be here, I said. Mom? I'm sorry. For what? For not seeing sooner. He swallowed. For needing a performance to notice the play. You saw, I said. You're seeing. That's the work. He nodded. He left. The door closed behind him with the soft confidence of a man who had decided and would keep deciding. I lifted my tea, breathed, and allowed myself 1 minute of the simple, greedy relief of an unaltered morning. Then I did the next thing on the list no one but me could see. I opened the kitchen window wide, let in the cool, and whispered, for both of us and maybe for someone else who needed to hear it, we're here. The neighborhood answered with a sound I'd missed until it was gone. A boy's footsteps on the sidewalk, light and fast, the rhythm of someone who knows where to run and where not to. A shadow paused at the corner of the yard. A small hand tucked something under the edge of our welcome mat and disappeared. Kinetic beat. I waited, counted to 30, then lifted the mat. A scrap of paper. Same pencil, same shaky hand. She watched me again. I told the man with the dog. He said to tell you to keep the cups. My throat closed on a breath that had teeth. The net, I realized, had already been cast wider than our table. I folded the paper and put it in the spiral. Then I put water on for soup because some fights require a pot simmering, and we were not done. Not by miles. By 8:30, the jar had left my refrigerator and entered the world of clipboards. Evan texted from the parking lot. With Dr. B, he logged the jar, labeled seal with my initials and his. They're sending to the hospital lab. He's calling it a concern about adulterants. Then, he's also calling Riverton City PD to ask protocol. Says it's better to do it clean. Clean. He's the word I had been starving for. I boiled water for tea and lined the white mugs like a picket fence. The blue one lay on its side where I had set it last night, a small ceramic body resting. Sun came through the window over the sink and caught the chip on its rim I hadn't noticed before. How long had that flaw been there while I pretended it was fine? At 10, the doorbell. A woman with a badge on a lanyard and a man whose badge lived on his belt. The woman wore flats and a cardigan like Mrs. Patel's, but stricter. The uniform of people who come into houses and have to leave them in some kind of order. The man had careful shoes and a notebook. He looked like he trusted more than most humans. "Ms. Mercer?" the woman asked me. "Joan," I said. "Come in." "Claudia Reyes," she said. "County Adult Protective Services." She tipped her chin toward the man. "Detective Vega, Riverton City PD. Dr. Baker contacted us this morning." Detective Vega nodded once. Ma'am. I had been rehearsing panic since dawn like a hymn, just in case. It didn't come. Instead, I felt the odd relief of someone else bringing a measuring tape to a crooked room. We sat at the table. I poured tea. They didn't touch the blue mug. Good. Before we start, I said, I'm recording from my memory and there are notes I've kept. I put the spiral on the table, its cover scuffed, its wire spine slightly bent where it had been a spine for me. Fair, Detective Vega said. We'll be recording too. He produced a small device that looked both modern and like every detective show I'd ever watched with Paul, our knees touching on the couch. Can you tell me, in your own words, what's been happening? My mornings went missing, I said. Then they came back when I stopped drinking from a particular mug. He watched me with the steady absence of reaction that good listeners wear like armor. And you believe someone in the home was adding something to your drink. I don't believe. I observed. I preserved. And yes, I slid the photos across. The amber bottle, the leaflet, the unlabeled dropper, the pill crusher, the brochure with the highlighted boxes. I heard words through a floor I've been listening through for years. Ms. Reyes's pen moved without looking at the page. What words? Increase the dosage. Evaluation window. Move on this while she's still. I kept my voice level because truth doesn't need my tremble. I'm not reporting grief. I'm reporting alteration without consent. Detective Vega glanced at the photos, then at the freezer. We'll pick up any other samples today. Any chance of cross-contamination? I kept it behind peas, I said, and beside chili labeled by a dead man who kept me alive. He didn't smile. He did something better. He wrote that down exactly. They asked about the boy, and I realized we'd gotten to him sooner than I'd planned. A child brought the first note, I said. He warned me. He has returned 2 more times and left scraps under the mat. He wrote that he saw the lady with the yellow hair putting something in my mug. He wrote that he told the man with the dog. The man with the dog, Ms. Reyes asked. Older, walks mornings, big brown mutt with a white blaze. I don't know names. I know rhythms. Detective Vega made a small mark beside a line. We've had complaints about the empty brick building on the next block. Squatters, kids, a retired mail carrier walks a dog on your street. He's called in trespassers before. Kids? Ms. Reyes repeated, and her pen paused above the page, thinking a different part of town into this one. We'll loop in child welfare if needed. It's needed, I said before I could dress the sentence up. He's small, he was cold. He held his backpack like it was a rib. Did he give a name? Vega asked. Not to me. I lifted the mat's latest gift from the spiral and slid it across. Same pencil, same hand. The detective put on glasses that looked too young for his face and read aloud. She watched me again. I told the man with the dog. He said to tell you to keep the cups. He tapped the paper once. Okay. Evan came home mid-conversation, hair damp like he'd run his hand through it at stoplights. He shook hands, sat, his knee bumping mine under the table in a touch that steadied both of us. We sent the jar in, he told them. Chain of custody started at 8:53. Dr. Baker said he'd call you before he called us if anything. Flagged. Vega finished, as if he and my son had been sharing sentences all morning. Lena, I asked. Still at Maya's, Evan said, flushing at the sister's name in front of strangers. She texted that she needs space from accusations and that her attorney friend advised her not to come back until we decide whether we're pressing charges, which we aren't. We're just gathering facts, I said. The good kind. Detective Vega stood. We're going to bag the mug and any bottles. We'll be careful. He looked at me in a way that meant it, and not in the way people look when they say careful and mean compliant. I'm also going to canvass. Kids see what adults miss. Adults see what kids can't name. While he labeled and sealed, Ms. Reyes asked the questions you ask when a woman says she's been altered in her own kitchen. Who else has keys? How long had the mornings been heavy? any prescriptions of my own, whether anyone besides me in this house had ever fallen, fainted, felt wrong. My mouth went dry, I said. My handwriting changed. I stopped reading the paper in the mornings and thought I'd forgotten how to want it. She nodded like someone who had been taught not to cry on duty, not because tears are weakness, but because they blur the boxes you have to check. "We'll open a case," she said. "It doesn't mean handcuffs. It means eyes." I gave them copies of the notes I'd written in the spiral, dates, times, who said what near which door. Words mattered now, and I had kept mine with the care I'd once given receipts and recipes. By noon, the house had lost several things and gained 3 cards: Ms. Reyes's, Detective Vega's, a general number for a youth services nonprofit I'd never heard of. The kitchen counter looked bare without the blue mug, as if a tooth had been pulled and the mouth didn't know where to put the tongue yet. "Eat," I told Evan when the door closed. We ate soup that tasted like garlic and the kind of day that looks like progress on paper. At 2, the phone. Dr. Baker. His voice made its doctorly effort to be the same temperature all the way through. The preliminary screen found what we expected and something we didn't. "Expected?" Evan asked, speaker on, his mouth suddenly dry again because mine was. "Doxylamine. The dosage looks high for a cup of coffee, and small amounts of ethanol consistent with an herbal tincture base." "And the unexpected?" I asked. "A trace of zolpidem," he said, and I could hear the paper slide under his hand as he checked the spelling he didn't need to check. "Ambien, not over the counter." The room tilted a degree I hadn't planned on. How trace? "Enough to register, not enough to render anyone unconscious," he said. "Enough to cloud judgment if the person is small, older, or grieving. I flagged it for toxicology to reconfirm and called Detective Vega. This exceeds my lane." "Thank you," I said, and my voice didn't crack until the call ended. Evan stared at the phone as if it had said a dead man's name. "Ambien," he said, and it was not a question. He looked like he was doing a math problem where all the numbers were people. "She doesn't have a prescription, does she?" He answered himself before I could. "It doesn't matter." He paced the kitchen, 3 steps to the window, 3 to the fridge, 3 back to the table. "I told her." He swallowed. "Does this make her a villain? Or does it just make her wrong in a way that hurts more than usual?" "It makes her wrong," I said. "Villain is a costume. This is a choice." At 4, the doorbell again. Not Vega. A woman and a boy and a man with a gentle dog who wore his white blaze like a blessing and a burden. The woman carried a clipboard and a tote. The boy clutched his backpack like always, but stood straighter with adults flanking him. The man wore a postal hat in retirement as if it had grown there. "Ms. Mercer?" the woman asked. "I'm with Youth Services. This is Mr. Weller." He flagged a concern about a youth in the empty building nearby. She stepped a bit to the side so the boy could see me first and not the clipboard. His hair was cleaner. Someone had found a comb. He looked smaller inside clean. "Hi," I said, like a person in a grocery store greeting someone else picking peaches. "I've been waiting to know your name so I could thank you properly." He watched the dog's ear for a second like it might give him his answer. "Noah," he said finally. "Noah Park." "Hello, Noah Park, nah," I said, and learned in the way a person like me learns that names are the difference between a warning and a person. Mr. Weller tugged gently on the leash. "Told the youth counselor he was the one making the notes." He nodded toward the mat. "Said there was a lady with yellow hair who poured from a dropper into a blue cup most mornings. Said sometimes he could see it through your window when he cut through the yard to the alley." "Said he told me too." He looked apologetic, a man who had already had more regrets than a person should have about things he'd seen late and tried to fix. I thought he was making it up until I wasn't sure. The Youth Services woman, Miss Harper, her name tag said in small print, stood with her clipboard held at stomach height like a shield. "He's been couching at the building with 2 other kids. We're placing them tonight." She looked at me, because looking at the dog and the boy and the man wasn't enough. He wanted to tell you first. He was afraid you'd think he was lying. I thought I was lying, I said, and put my hand on the back of a chair because wood is steadier than humans. I didn't, but I know that fear. Noah glanced at the kitchen like it was a stage he recognized without wanting to. I was looking for cans, he said, as if confessing a sin and a skill. Sometimes I go by the windows. People leave bottles near the alley. I don't go in, I don't take, I just look. He stopped, looked at Ms. Harper, collected permission in a quick eye flick, then went on. She put stuff in your cup. Not always. Like, some days only a little. Like a drop. Like this. He pantomimed with an invisible bulb, head tilting the way she must have, a muscle memory that made my stomach clench. One time I saw a white pill in a crusher like the ones my grandma had. She pressed it and then she put powder in the coffee filter. My mouth filled with a taste that had nothing to do with tea. Mr. Weller's dog leaned against my leg the way good dogs do when rooms fill. "Do you know what the pill was?" Miss Harper asked him. Noah shook his head. "Square. White. Had a little line down it. She had a little bottle, too. Brown. She kept both in a drawer. She put the dropper in her mouth sometimes. I think she forgot and then made a face." He hesitated, looking down as if he'd lost a word on the tile. "You look sleepy," he said to me, small and fierce. "You used to sit by the window with a paper, and then you didn't anymore, and then you did again." "Thank you," I said. The words felt inadequate and right, like bread at a sorrow. "I have soup." He looked at Miss Harper with eyes that asked a question I didn't get to answer. She shook her head. "We have to go to the center. Intake, then placement." She softened it with a promise they always mean and can't always keep. "We'll bring you by once you're settled if that works." "Can he leave his notes?" I asked. "If he has more. With Mr. Weller. Or with me. In case he remembers something later." Ms. Harper nodded. "We'll coordinate with Detective Vega," she said. "He's asked to talk with Noah at the center with me present." She smiled at the boy the way you smile at a person and not at a case file. "You did good." Noah shrugged like boys do when praised. It slid off his shoulders and landed near his shoes. He looked at the counter. "Where's the blue cup?" he asked. "Resting," I said. "We retired it." He nodded like a man at a funeral. "Good." Then sudden, as if his mouth had found the hinge on a memory door. She dropped it once. It didn't spill. She was mad. "I was there," I said, and felt a click in my chest where stories lock. When they left, the house felt simultaneously bigger and crowded, with people who had never been in it and suddenly were, with systems that had names but no faces yet. The dog's hair on my pants was a comfort I hadn't expected. At 5, my phone chattered with a text from Lena I didn't want and had to read. "I'm staying at Maya's through Monday. Do not let strangers in my home. I am contacting an attorney. Also, tell Noah to stop loitering. He's been peeping in windows for weeks. It's creepy." My fingers typed without asking me first. "His name is Noah. He saved my life." 3 dots. Then nothing. Then, "You always did love an audience." There it was. Not villain, but something that wears villainy clothes when the mirror is too honest. At 6, Detective Vega called. "Lab confirmed the ambient trace on the first pass," he said. "We'll need a confirmatory test. Your jar gave us enough to do both. Did you retain any other coffee?" "In my notebook," I said. "Dates, amounts. I kept Wednesdays. The rest I rinsed away." "People don't usually think to save," he said. "You did." "I ran a house," I said. "I saved everything." Knock-knock interviews turned up a retired mail carrier who confirmed a boy talked to him about a woman pouring something into a cup more than once. He didn't want to be a busybody. He's very sorry for that now. A pause like paper turning. "We'll request video from the pharmacy on the label you photographed, and from the store that carries the sleep aid boxes you found. It's not an arrest warrant. It is a story with tape." Will there be handcuffs? I asked, not because I wanted them, but because I wanted to understand what the day could still do to us. Not today, he said. This is delicate. There's family, intent, dosing, a house full of things that look normal until they're not. He exhaled a sound that wasn't quite a sigh. Sometimes the punishment is a door that doesn't open again. After we hung up, the kitchen was quiet in a way that didn't pinch. I wrote in the spiral, APS plus RCPD visited. Dr. B called. Ambien trace plus doxylamine plus ethanol base. Noah Park came with Ms. Harper, plus Mr. Weller, plus dog. Witness to dropper, crusher, powder, and a filter placing tonight. Lena texted about my home and attorneys. I wrote, his name is Noah. He saved my life. I stared at that last sentence until it became a shape and not just meaning. At 8, the house did its settling sounds, pipes ticking, a branch tapping the window like a late guest. Evan stood at the sink and washed 2 bowls, sleeves pushed up, everything he had carried today running off his hands in warm water. I don't know where to put any of this, he said, not looking at me because looking at me would turn it into a sermon neither of us deserved. On paper, I said. For now. He smiled, tiny and tired. You and your paper. Paper is where truth goes when it needs a place to sleep, I said. We didn't watch anything again. The television belonged to noise I didn't need. We read, or rather, books sat open on our laps while our eyes did the other workbooks can't. Just before bed, I opened my closet and took down a box I hadn't touched since we moved into his house. A small legal thing labeled in Paul's print, wills and power of attorney, executed. I read the dates. I ran my finger over signatures that made me a person with say when say was needed. I slid the copies I'd signed yesterday from Dr. Baker's office into a new folder. Medical records request filed. Crisis, the storytellers call it, when the world you built collapses and the world you feared replaces it for a minute. Maybe that had happened at noon, maybe at 5. Maybe it had been happening for months and I was only now calling it by its name. I added one more line to the spiral. Tomorrow, ask Ms. Reyes about what happens to boys who save old women. Ask what we can be to him that isn't harm. Sleep arrived like a knock and then a key. I dreamed about cups, white ones lined like teeth, a blue one turned on its side, a boy's hands cupping a dog's face while the dog leaned into him with a trust that is both born and taught. In the morning, the light was cooler. I made tea. I listened to the house breathe. I waited for the phone to ring and for the next knock at the door. The net had widened. It was not just around me now. That made me afraid. It also made me braver. I had a plan for the day that looked like the kind of list a woman writes when she's told to rest and can't. Call Ms. Reyes. Bake something I can carry in foil to a boy I'm not allowed to bring home. Buy a new mug that means nothing and everything. Call the bank and change the online password I'd made too simple in my grief. Write a letter to myself about mornings and sign it with the name I would not lose. Kinetic beat. I opened the front door to air the house, and there on the mat lay one more scrap of paper, folded twice, pencil again. He must have slipped by early with Mr. Weller, or alone because it was still damp with the cool. He wrote only 3 words this time, as if he had learned the power of small. Keep the cups. I will, I said to the step, to the street, to the part of the world that had finally come to see. Then I put the scrap in the spiral, put the kettle on, and got ready to learn a new shape of family that didn't yet have a recipe card but might, if we were stubborn and lucky, have a table. Some mornings arrive like a verdict. This one came like a receipt, itemized, signed, filed. Detective Vega called at 9 sharp. Talks confirmed, he said. Doxylamine and zolpidem present in the saved sample. We've conferred with the DA. Given the dosing pattern and your documentation, they're filing a misdemeanor count of food tampering and seeking a no-contact order as a condition of release. You'll get service papers today. We're also returning your property that isn't evidence." "What counts as mine?" I asked. "The blue mug stays with us," he said. "I'll bring you a receipt for a cup." He let himself have the smallest corner of humor. It's not how I pictured my morning either. When he hung up, the kitchen felt relieved and empty the way rooms do after the plumber leaves. Evan stood with his hands on the back of a chair like a man bracing on a ship, then let go and exhaled. "Okay," he said, and I heard the man who had been practicing saying that word until it felt like a plank underfoot. By noon, a process server had handed me a packet so thick it could stop a door. I signed for it with a hand that didn't shake. The no-contact order spelled my name right, spelled her name right, spelled the line between us in sentences so plain even grief could read them. She could collect her clothes with an officer present on Tuesday between 1 and 4. She could not come to the house without notice. She could not decide when my mornings happened. I made tea. I lined the white mugs on the island like fence posts. The sun found the place the blue cup used to occupy and warmed it until the wood glowed. I didn't miss the cup. I missed the version of my house that didn't need a file folder to feel safe. At 2, Ms. Reyes called about Noah. "Placement stabilized," she said. "He's with a foster family on Maple, 2 miles from you. He asked if he could see you. We can arrange supervised visits. If you're interested beyond that, I can start the paperwork for you to become a kin-like resource." "Kin-like," I said, trying the words on my tongue. They fit. "Yes, start it." "You'll need fingerprints, a home inspection, CPR, and a training. 8 hours. We can accelerate parts of that for short-term authorization with supervision." "I've done harder things in less time," I said, "but I can do 8 hours." She laughed lightly, a sound that arrived with relief and left with responsibility. "I believe you," she said. "First visit Friday, the center at 3. That night, Evan and I ate leftover soup and bread again, a little absurd tradition of ordinary. "I talked to an attorney," he said, as if confessing to cheating on a diet. "Not to go for anyone's throat, to make sure the POA stays paused and the house title is protected and—" He swallowed. "And to understand what separation looks like if that's where this goes." "Do you want it to go there?" I asked. He stared at the butter knife the way men look at tools when they know the tool can't fix the thing at hand. "I want honest," he said. "I don't know if we can have that together anymore." "It's not my call," I said, "but I'll cook and fold and get my shots and make sure you leave for work with clean shirts while you figure it out." He smiled sideways, the boy in him lifting the corners. "You always did." Friday arrived cool, 60 grader at noon, and bright enough to make the sidewalks look like they'd been washed. I put on the navy dress because some days you bring your backbone on a hanger, and some days it arrives with your shoes. The center smelled like new paint and hand sanitizer, and 100 stories trying to become safe. Noah sat at a round table with a counselor, knees tucked up, backpack at his feet like a loyal dog. He looked at me as if he'd been practicing a casual glance and forgot the last step. "Hi," I said. "Hi," he said, relief moving across his face like sun across a floor. We sat. We talked about small things because those are the stairs you use to reach the big room. The counselor asked if we wanted to draw. We said no, and then drew anyway. Him a house with a square door and a rectangle window, me a mug that came out looking like a bowl, because drawing is a different truth than words. "Do you want to see my new bed?" he asked after a while, eager and apologetic. "It's not here, but I can tell you." He described it like a man does a car. The size, what it could do, bounce, how it felt to get in it clean. He rubbed his hands together once when he said clean, not because they were dirty, but because he remembered when they had been. "Do you want to come to my house when they say yes?" I asked, and the counselor nodded in a way that meant the paperwork could make room for that sentence. He thought for a full count of 5. "If it's the same house," he said, "with the plant and the window. So I can tell if something is wrong again." "The house is the same," I said. "The rules are new." The next week was made of steps. Fingerprints left ink on every finger that took a day to wear off. A woman with a clipboard walked through the house and tapped outlets with a little tool that chirped. She looked approvingly at the fire extinguisher Evan had bought that morning, at the cheap lock he had installed on the cabinet with medicine I actually used, at the sheet on my bed tucked hospital corner tight. "You ran a house," she said. "I can tell." "I'm running a new one," I said. We did CPR on practice mannequins whose faces looked like anyone and no one. We watched a training video about trauma that felt both too general and exactly right. "You can't love it away," the instructor said. "You can sit with it until it doesn't sit on the child anymore." Evan brought home a smoke detector and installed it in the hallway, with the quiet efficiency of a man who needed to turn his hands to something that made a clear sound when you pressed a button. He also, after an evening of quiet and paperwork and one phone call from Maya that lasted 42 seconds and ended with two people trying not to cry, moved some clothes into the guest room. "She needs time," he said. "I need space. I don't know which comes first." "Some things can be decided twice," I said. "Once in your head, again in a room." At the end of the week, Ms. Reyes called with a smile in her voice. "Provisional approval," she said. "Supervised visits at your house. If those go well, we can do unsupervised hours. He's very eager. He asked if you have the rosemary still." "I do," I said. "It's alive this time." She laughed. "He told us you know how to water things." That Saturday, Noah came with Ms. Harper at 2. He took off his shoes without being asked and tucked them neatly to the side. He walked straight to the window by the sink like a pilgrim visiting a shrine and looked at the place the blue cup had once been. He nodded once. Then he inspected the white mugs lined like little cliffs. "Good," he said with solemn gravity. "Keep the cups." "Help me," I said, handing him a dish towel. We dried dishes like people making vows with plates. Miss Harper sat at the table with a soft smile and a legal pad, present but not intrusive. She asked now and then, "What does that smell remind you of? And what do you call that in your house?" in a way that made me trust her with more than a clipboard. We played a game of Uno at the island and argued about whether a draw 4 can be played on a draw 2. "House rules," I said. "Mine say no." "Mine say yes," he said. "New house," I said, and we both smiled because we were both right and both willing to be wrong. After an hour, he asked if he could visit the rosemary like other children ask for the bathroom. He touched the leaves and then, with the authority of an 11-year-old who has learned the language of plants and people on the same street, said, "It needs water." He watered it and replaced the can on the tray without being told. We made grilled cheese because that is the treaty food of childhood. He took a bite and then looked at the pan, then at me. "I used to think I didn't like cheese," he said. "I think I don't like being dizzy." "Me too," I said, and we both chewed reverently. By the second week, the visits had expanded to 3 hours. Miss Harper sat in the living room with a book and pretended not to listen while we did math disguised as cooking. If we have 6 cookies and we give 2 to Mr. Weller when he walks by with the dog, how many are left for tea? He counted and then, unprompted, shoved one off the plate to the corner. "For later," he said. "In case a boy shows up and needs it." "Good rule," I said. "New house, best rule." On a Tuesday, Judge Alvarez's clerk called. "We have a review hearing Friday regarding the protective order," she said. "You may attend by phone. There's also a juvenile calendar at 9 if you'd like to observe the status on the park matter. There won't be testimony, but the court will note your interest." "Thank you," I said. And then, because I had learned to ask for what I needed, "I need 5 minutes at some point to talk about guardianship paths." "Bring a pen," she said. "Judge is efficient." Friday, I wore the navy dress like armor and sat at the kitchen table with my phone and a notepad. The protective order hearing took 7 minutes. On the other end of the line, In a courtroom, I could see in my mind but not in my eye. A prosecutor, a public defender, a judge with a patient voice, and a woman I had loved enough to share my house with spoke in phrases that sounded like my life stripped of its kitchen. Adulterant, consent, mitigating, community supervision. Judge Alvarez's voice was precise without being cruel. "Ms. Mercer," she said to the woman, not me, "you will have no contact with the petitioner outside the terms set forth. You will complete a course on caregiving ethics. You will surrender your keys today. You will not return to the residence without law enforcement escort at the prearranged time. Do you understand?" A pause. "Yes, Your Honor." Then the juvenile calendar. Names shuffled. Lawyers stood and sat. The park matter came and went with a date and a note about foster stability, and then the clerk, miracle worker, found my 5 minutes. "In the interest of the minor, the court is open to hearing from Ms. Joan Mercer regarding kin-like placement," Judge Alvarez said. "Ms. Mercer, keep it brief and kind." "I'm better at one of those," I said, and a few people in the room laughed because kindness, when it stays after laughter, is sturdier. I said what I could in the time, that the boy had saved me, and I wanted to be the kind of adult who made a place for that. That my mornings belonged to me again, and I wanted to use them to make breakfasts for someone who deserved to wake to safety. That I knew love wouldn't fix everything, that I knew paper would fix some, that I had both. "The court notes the petitioner's interest," Judge Alvarez said. "Ms. Reyes will liaise with counsel. We proceed properly." I could hear her smile when she said properly. Not the bureaucrat's kind, but the kind a grandmother uses to mean clean hands, clean heart, clean floor. Mrs. Mercer, the court expects continued cooperation. "Yes, Your Honor," I said, and meant it the way you mean a promise to a person who sees you. By Thanksgiving, the house had the sound of boy built into it. We didn't have custody, not yet, but we had Saturday mornings and Tuesday afternoons, and a shelf with a baseball glove and an old paperback he wanted, because the dog on the cover looked like Mr. Weller's. He and I walked 3 miles to the library and back, not because we didn't have a car, but because moving forward on foot is a kind of spell. He counted dogs. I counted porch pumpkins. We both counted how many times a person said hello without being asked. Evan, who had moved fully into the guest room and called a different apartment mine when he signed a short lease, came by every evening he could. He and Noah developed a ritual that looked like Lego and sounded like math. He and I developed a ritual that looked like 2 people washing the same dish twice and sounded like grief turning into something less heavy to carry. In December, Ms. Reyes brought me a folder. "Home study approved," she said. "Extended visits through the holiday if all parties agree." "Parties," I said, looking around my kitchen at 1 boy, 1 man, 1 plant. "We agree." Lena did not come back for the clothes collection day. Her sister met the officer and took the boxes. The no-contact order worked the way good paper does. It kept boundaries where memory might have smudged them. In January, the criminal case resolved the way these things tend to when no one wants a cage, but everyone wants a lock. Diversion program, mandatory classes, a year of clean tests, the order staying in place. She sent me a letter through her attorney in which she apologized for overstepping in a paragraph that never used the word sorry. I wrote back with 1 line, "I accept your choice to stay away." In March, I bought a small house 6 blocks over. You could call it downsizing. I called it starting. Evan co-signed because paperwork likes men and steady paychecks. I brought the down payment that had slept in an account with Paul's name on it long enough to earn a few pennies and a lot of dust. The house had a kitchen that faced east. In the first week, Noah and I painted the cabinets the color of new cream, and he pressed his palm into the back of one, tiny and sincere and out of sight, our signature under the paint. The day we moved, Mr. Weller walked by with the dog and a paper sack of muffins. "Heads up," he said, pointing with his chin. "I think this one's yours." He meant the boy, not the house. He meant the way Noah's feet had found the front steps like they'd been waiting for him. The first morning in the new place, I woke before the light and waited for dread. It didn't come. Instead, the house made small noises the way a person clears their throat before reading aloud. The heater clicked, a branch ticked the window, the fridge knocked like a polite neighbor. I put water on. I lined 3 white mugs. I turned the empty spot where a blue mug might have gone into a place for a little potted mint Noah had bought with quarters because he liked the way it made his fingers smell honest. Kinetic beat. A folded scrap slid under our new mat. We weren't on the old street where the notes had started. The paper was clean, the pencil newer. He had written with a steady hand this time. New house. Same cups. I smiled with my mouth and my bones. "Yes," I said to the floor, to the boy waking in the back room where his backpack slept on a chair that had been waiting for that exact job. "Yes." Spring made everything warmer by inches. On a Wednesday, Judge Alvarez granted us kinship guardianship with a line that felt like the chime of a spoon against a glass. "We will revisit adoption when the law can see what the heart has already done," she said, and banged the gavel lightly, as if not to startle anyone who had finally fallen asleep after a long night. We celebrated with grilled cheese and tomato soup and a small cake. Noah decorated with a slanted house, and 3 dots we agreed were mugs. We invited Mr. Weller and the dog and Ms. Harper, who laughed and cried at the same time like social workers do when a day ends better than the average. Evan took a picture where we all looked into the lens like it was going to tell the truth about us, and for once did. Sometimes I think about how the story could have gone a different way, that I might have gone to Stone Ridge to visit someone else's courtyard and called it mine, that a boy might have stopped leaving notes because no one answered, that a mug might have meant nothing but glaze. Then the kettle sings and Noah's feet hit the hallway and Evan's key sounds in the lock and the house takes a breath I can hear. And we're here, exactly as fragile and strong as a morning can be. I still write in the spiral, though the pages run out soon. Today's entry took only 3 lines. Mugs. White, interchangeable. Blue, retired to evidence and memory. Family, chosen, signed, alive. I slid the notebook into the headboard and felt the click. The mint on the sill caught the sun and lifted its small, rough leaves like hands. "Tea?" I called. "Tea," 2 voices said, one pitched low from a day at work, one still sandy with sleep. We poured. We watched the steam rise. We kept the cups. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just 1 word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes 1 word is enough to say you were here.